I'm just out on another hen hunt. Right by the road, if you can't hear. But there's two. There's one little one. Another little one. Just going out on a mushroom hunt. Figured I'd take you guys along. We've had quite a bit of rain in the last week, on and off, a little bit here and there, so hopefully there'll be some mushrooms out. It's been pretty chilly though. Yesterday it didn't even get up to 50 degrees here, and overnight it got down in the 30s. It's cooling off quick. I think we're gonna get a early winter. Might even get a pretty harsh winter, we'll see. Usually though, when it cools off early, if the big lakes get a chance to turn over, we don't get as much snow because we get a lot less of that lake effect snow, so we'll see. But another big oak right there with a branch busted off. I'm gonna head over there and see if there's any hens around it. No hens on this one, but that'd be a prime candidate. Big old broken off branch right there. Plus it's a nice big old oak. Whenever I come to a field like this, generally it has to be a mowed field that, you know, is in civilization. That's the only place I find these kind of mushrooms. But I'll just look out at the lawn, and if I see dark green spots, that's usually a sign that there's some mushrooms growing there. So we'll head on out here and see if we can't spot any of those dark green spots and find some mushrooms. Not 100% sure if you can pick it up in the camera. Looks like you can. But just to the left of that bare spot, right in the center of the screen, is a dark green patch. Let's go see if there's any mushrooms in it. Yep, sure are. These right here are fairy ring mushrooms. They're fairly distinct, but you gotta be careful with any mushrooms growing in a lawn because there are poisonous lookalikes that'll grow right in with them. But these will have a whitish spore print. And one of the key characteristics for me is the head will pop off from the stem, and this stem itself is really tough and kind of fibrous. There are some distinct features in the gill too, but I'm not really going to go into detail with this one, other than to tell you it's a really good edible, and if you're interested, then you should, you know, get a good field guide or 3, and maybe go out with somebody that knows about these mushrooms so they can show you firsthand, because honestly a video or photos won't do it justice, simply because there are other mushrooms that could be mistaken for this. But if you pay attention to the details, they're very easy to identify. Another distinct feature is they have this little umbel, little hump right in the center of the cap. Got that little hump right there. And these mushrooms will dry out and shrivel up in the dry spells, but as soon as it rains they'll puff right back up and start growing again. Now you may look at those fairy ring mushrooms, Marasmius Oreades, and say, well, that's a pretty small mushroom, you know, there's not much there. But if you get out in the field like this, you can easily gather hundreds, if not thousands, within just a couple hours time, even an hour. I went out in 1 hour and gathered over 500, enough to fill up a gallon Ziploc bag halfway. And it's an excellent mushroom, one of the best eating mushrooms there is. So don't let the small size fool you. Now it's kind of raining on and off today, and it's actually quite chilly, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is, what I'm really looking for are hen of the woods mushrooms, and they tend to grow around oak trees. And if I'm looking off through this field, you know, just because I know my trees, I can tell that there's very few oaks back in there. That right there is mostly black locust, or possibly honey locust, but most likely black locust. I can see that yellow, that's probably a hickory. And that bright yellow, and just to the right of that is a much lighter yellow, which is probably a willow. So that area is not going to be very productive for the mushrooms I'm looking for, especially in the fall. And the point of that is, although I love getting out and hiking and just enjoying the wildlife and everything I see along the way, main purpose is to find mushrooms today. So I'm not going to waste my time running through that woods when I know that I'm probably not going to find anything. Well, I got back into the oak woods here, and I just checked that big oak there, because in the past it has produced hens, but it always tends to produce early. And sure enough, there was a couple really old hens that you couldn't even distinguish as hens. I'm pretty sure that's what they were, though, just based on prior years' experience. But here's another nice oak. Take a look. And sure enough, there's a hen. Now this one is, gotta fight my way in between all the branches here, fallen branches. But this one is still pretty springy. It's kind of light in color. Easy way to tell if they're good or not is to look at the pores. The pores should still be white, and for it to be a really good one, you shouldn't really be able to see the pores, because the pores will get more visible as the mushroom ages. Now I can somewhat see the pores here, but this one has still got a nice bounce to it. So that would be a nice hen to harvest. Just a bit on the old side, but still plenty good. And it's as big as my two hands, probably about as big as a soccer ball. But I'll leave that one for somebody else. I see that mushroom right in the center of the screen. That's a shelf mushroom. I believe it's Fomes ignarius. Similar to the horse's hoof mushroom, but I see a lot of people that are in the south and they can't find chaga, because chaga grows on typically white birch, and that's usually found in the north. And also some people can't find the horse's hoof fungus, which can be found growing on birch and also on beech trees, is where I find it. But if you're looking for a tinder fungus, that mushroom right there works just as good as, well, almost as good as chaga, and just as good as horse's hoof fungus. So if you're in the south, look for black locust trees. That's what that is, and you'll find it. And it makes great tinder. There's another one. It's up pretty high in the tree, but generally black locust, they tend to cover an entire area. They grow in groves around here anyway. And if you find one Fomes mushroom, you're likely to find them growing on a bunch of the black locusts in the area. So it's a easy way to gather up a bunch of tinder. You can use that to transport fire over long distances as well. If you light one of those mushrooms with a small spark, it'll likely burn for anywhere from 5 to 10 hours. Alright, so I walked maybe 50 yards, 25 yards, and I found one that's low enough to harvest. Probably not getting a very good image of that for you because of the sky and the rain. But if you want to find one that doesn't require processing, just look for one growing on a dead black locust. Same thing goes with the false tinder fungus, or the chaga for that matter. It'll be a lot drier, and it'll take a spark easier. That way you don't have to process it. Really fresh chicken of the woods. Now I'm not going to cut on this one, but you can see how soft and bouncy that is. Extremely fresh. That'll be a nice chicken for somebody. That's why I'm not going to cut it, because somebody might come here and find it, actually want to harvest and eat it. Another week or two, that thing might be huge. It's growing all over this oak. And just for comparison, this is an old chicken of the woods. They turn white, and they basically just eventually kind of crumble up and dissolve. But that's a good way to know if they're in the area. Find those old rotting white fruit bodies. Sometimes they'll be laying on the ground. Sometimes it'll just be a white mass of what almost looks like sawdust. Like right here. Eventually that whole mushroom will just crumble up into what looks like white sawdust. Down in here by the swamp edge, I see a mushroom growing on that dead tree. See what it is. A little bit thick in here. This is a lookalike to dryad saddle or pheasant back, which is a springtime mushroom that's edible that you tend to find around the same time you find morels, May. But this one generally grows in the fall. And all that, you can't see it very well on this one. The easy way to distinguish the two is this one will have a black foot. This is the black-footed polypore. Generally it'll have a small stem and it'll be entirely black. And that's an easy way to distinguish the black-footed polypore from pheasant back, or dryad saddle, as some people call it. I know this is a mushroom hunt, and I've already done a few videos on this plant, but this is mullein. It's medicinal. It's really good for colds, for sore throat, for congestion. It can be made into a tea, or you can actually dry it and smoke it to relieve chest congestion as well. It's an expectorant. It has a real fuzzy leaf, and it makes a great emergency toilet paper. Now, I've seen some people say that these hairs are irritating, but they're not. It's really soft, and it makes a great toilet paper, so don't believe everything you hear people tell you. Well, the rain's coming down pretty good. As long as I stay in this woods, I'm alright. Figured I'd take a moment though to mention that Well, I think it's important to make the distinction that even though a lot of my videos focus on identifying plants and mushrooms and trees and stuff, I wouldn't want people to get hung up on the identification of everything, because that's really not what it's about. It's actually about getting out and having fun and enjoying the woods, and that's really what my channel's about, you know. It's about actually getting out in the woods and enjoying what nature has to offer and actually using it and putting it to use.